They laughed when Marcus arrived with a toolbox instead of a weapon. The dragons of the Keth Mountains had seen many humans before, diplomats with treaties, warriors with swords, merchants with silk and spice. But a human showing up at the edge of Vorka's territory with a dented metal box, a patched-up jacket, and the audacity to knock on a dragon's door like it was a neighbor's house, that was new. Vorak was the smallest dragon in the Northern Range. Not small by human standards, he was still the size of a barn with wings that could black out the sun, but small by dragon standards, which meant the others never let him forget it. His cabin, carved into the base of Stoneback Ridge, was a joke among the elders. Too cramped, too simple. One wall had been cracking for 3 seasons. The roof leaked when a mountain wind came sideways. No dragon offered to help him fix it. A human did. Marcus Webb, 34 years old, former military engineer, currently unemployed and apparently out of his mind, had heard about the cracking wall through a trade post rumor and decided, for reasons that made complete sense to him and 0 sense to anyone else, that he should do something about it. The other dragons watched from the ridge above. They placed bets on how fast he would run. They were still laughing when the storm came. They stopped laughing after. The crack in the wall was the length of 3 men laid end to end, and it breathed. That was the word Marcus used when he first saw it, breathed. In the cold mountain air, the gap in Vorka's stone wall pulled heat from inside and pushed it out in slow, rhythmic wisps like the cabin itself was exhaling. He pressed his palm flat against the stone on either side of the fracture and closed his eyes. Felt the vibration. The wall was separating, not just cracking. The foundation had shifted, probably 3 seasons ago, judging by the weathering on the exposed edge, and everything above it had been quietly, patiently coming apart ever since. Marcus whistled low. Opened his toolbox. "You are doing that wrong," said a voice like boulders rolling downhill. He looked up. Vorak was watching him from the cabin entrance, enormous amber eyes tracking every movement with the particular expression of someone watching a child try to perform surgery. Behind the dragon, up on the ridge, Marcus could see 3 more shapes, bigger dragons, wings folded, heads angled down. Watching, one of them made a sound that was probably laughter. It echoed off the mountain like a rock slide. "I haven't started yet," Marcus said. "Hard to do it wrong before I've done anything." Vorak blinked. That apparently was not the response he expected. Marcus Webb had spent 11 years in military engineering. He had repaired forward operating bases under fire, rebuilt load-bearing structures with whatever material happened to be available, and once famously kept a bridge functional for 6 weeks past its structural expiration date using cable wire, and a method his commanding officer had called genuinely insane and then quietly approved. He was not a man who was easily rattled by a large audience, even if that audience had wings, and considered him lunch-adjacent. He pulled out his notebook, crouched down at the base of the crack, and started sketching the foundation line. "The other humans," Vorak said slowly, "who came before?" They looked at the wall and said it could not be fixed. "How many came before?" "2. Were either of them engineers?" A pause. "One was a stonecutter. What did the other one do?" "He sold cheese." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, okay." He went back to his sketch. "The wall can be fixed. The foundation shift is the problem. If you just fill the crack without addressing that, it'll open again inside a year. Probably worse. We need to anchor the base, redistribute the load, then seal from the bottom up. It's going to take time." "How much time?" "Depends on weather. Couple of weeks if it stays dry." Another sound from the ridge. Louder this time. The dragons up there were fully committed to the entertainment value of the situation, and Marcus was apparently the most interesting thing to happen on Stoneback Ridge in a long time. He could feel their eyes on his back, could feel the specific weight of being laughed at by creatures that could swallow him without chewing. He had felt that weight before in different forms from different sources. It never stopped a wall from cracking. Vorak watched him work for the better part of an hour without speaking. Marcus measured, tested the stone density in 3 separate spots, checked the roof overhang to understand how water was running down the face of the wall during rain, and noted the places where the crack deviated from a straight line. Each deviation told a story about stress distribution. The wall had been trying to solve its own problem, and failing. That was the thing about structures. They always tried. They just needed someone to help them do it right. "You're not afraid," Vorik finally said. It was not a question. Of the wall. Of me. Marcus looked up. The dragon was enormous in the way that mountains are enormous. Not threatening. Exactly. Just present in a way that made you aware of your own size in comparison. Amber eyes. Scales that caught the thin mountain light and turned it bronze. A long scar running from his left shoulder to the base of his wing that was not recent. "You knocked on my territory marker," Vorik said. "No human has ever done that." "I knocked. You answered. Seemed fine. I could have eaten you. You didn't." Vorik stared at him for a long moment. Up on the ridge, the watching dragons had gone quieter. Not silent, but the laughter had shifted into something more like attention. Marcus went back to his notebook. He had the foundation mapped well enough to start planning material. The stone on this part of the mountain was dense granite with good load-bearing character, which was lucky. He could source what he needed from the loose field on the lower slope without hauling anything up from the valley. "The other dragons," Marcus said without looking up, "the ones up there, they live in the main ridge complex." "Yes." And none of them offered to help with the wall. Vorik was quiet for 3 full seconds. "They said the cabin was too small to be worth fixing." Marcus wrote something in his notebook. Did not comment. The silence between them sat easy, which surprised both of them, though neither said so. He stayed until the light went thin and the mountain cold got its teeth in. Packed his tools in order, the way he always did, not obsessively, just the way a person does when tools are the difference between a job done and a job half done. Stood up. His knees protested. He was 34, but his knees were apparently 47. "I'll be back at first light," he said. "I need to source some material from the lower slope." "You are coming back," Vorik said. "I told you it takes a couple of weeks." Other humans who have come to this mountain did not come back after the first day. Marcus picked up his toolbox. Other humans weren't fixing your wall. He started down the path. The mountain wind came at him sideways, cold and personal. "Make sure nothing rolls off the roof tonight. That overhang is holding more weight than it should, and I don't want the drainage situation getting worse before I've had a chance to address it." He was halfway down the slope before he heard it, the sound from the ridge. The big dragons, still watching, still laughing. He kept walking. He had a wall to fix and approximately 0 interest in their opinion about it. Up on the ridge, the biggest of the watching dragons, a scarred elder named Doric, who had been deciding whether to be amused or offended for the past hour, turned to the one beside him. "He will not return," Doric said. The other dragon said nothing. The wind picked up from the north. Neither of them noticed. He came back. Every morning for 9 days, Marcus Webb appeared at the base of Stoneback Ridge with his toolbox and his notebook and his particular brand of unhurried focus that the dragons on the ridge found either deeply suspicious or deeply boring, depending on who you asked. He started at the foundation. He always started at the foundation because that was the rule of any structure worth keeping. You do not fix the face of a thing while its feet are still failing. The work was slow, and it was supposed to be slow. He sourced granite from the lower field, carrying it up in a canvas pack that was clearly designed for a larger person, the straps sitting wrong on his shoulders, the load shifting every 3rd step on the uneven slope. He mixed mortar with mountain water and let cure the proper length of time, not the almost proper length of time, not the close enough length of time. The proper length of time. He braced the base of the crack with 3 anchor stones that he set so precisely level that even Vorik, who had been watching from a carefully chosen distance of about 12 feet, could not find a flaw in the placement. On the 4th day, Vorik moved to 8 feet. On the 6th day, he was 4 feet away and asking questions. Not curious questions. Practical ones. First, how does the mortar hold in freeze-thaw cycles? What makes granite better than the limestone further down the slope? Why does the bracing need to go so deep when the crack is only on the surface? Marcus answered each one without interrupting his work, which Vorik appreciated, because he had encountered many humans who stopped everything they were doing to explain things, as though the explanation mattered more than the doing. The questions got less practical on day 7. "You were in a war," Vorik said. It was not a question. He had seen the way Marcus moved, the economy of it, the way he positioned himself with his back towards solid stone when he was focused on something else, the old scar on his right forearm that had been stitched by someone in a hurry. Couple of them, Marcus said. He was packing mortar into the lower seal. And now you fix walls. Always fix walls. The war part was just the location. Vorik, consider this. What made you come here? To my wall. Marcus smoothed the mortar with the flat of his tool. Trade post in the valley had a notice board. Someone had written on it, Dragon Cabin on Stoneback, cracking north wall, occupant unable to source repair help. It wasn't a formal request, more like someone venting. I wrote that, Vorik said quietly. I know. I did not think anyone would come. Most people probably saw it and moved on. Marcus sat back on his heels and looked at the repair progress. The lower third of the crack was sealed, properly sealed, with the kind of work that would still be holding in 50 years. I've moved on past a lot of things I probably should have stopped for. Getting harder to do that. The ridge dragons were still watching. Less noise now than on the first few days. Doric, the elder, had taken to arriving later in the morning and staying longer in the afternoon, which Marcus had noticed but not mentioned. There was a specific kind of attention that came from people who wanted to dismiss something and kept finding they couldn't, and Doric wore it in the set of his massive shoulders. On day 8, something changed in the air. Marcus felt it before he understood it. A pressure shift, the way the wind off the mountain went still in the late afternoon when it should have been picking up. He stopped working and stood and looked north. The sky above the peaks was clear, but the clear had the wrong quality to it. Too thin, too bright at the edges. He had seen that sky before. He had seen it in the Northern Mountain Theater, 3 days before a storm system came in so fast that the weather units had missed it entirely, and the forward base had 40 minutes to prepare instead of 40 hours. Vorik, the dragon, looked at him. How long does it take for weather to come over the northern peak from open sky? Vorik followed his gaze. His nostrils flared. Something moved in his amber eyes, recognition, and then a different kind of attention, the kind that does not waste time on denial. If the wind drops before sunset, the storm is already committed. It comes by midnight. The roof, overhang. Yes. The east side drainage is still compromised. Yes. Marcus was already calculating. The mortar on the lower seal was cured, but the middle third was not finished. He had 2 days of work left on the crack itself, and the roof overhang on the east side was carrying water weight that a hard storm would turn into a structural problem fast. If the overhang failed mid-storm, it would dump water directly into the exposed section of the crack, and everything he had built over 9 days would crack open again by morning. He went to the toolbox, pulled out the rope, the heavy gauge anchor pins. What are you doing? Vorik asked. Temporary roof brace. It won't be pretty, but it'll hold the overhang through the storm. He was already moving toward the east wall. I need to get above the overhang line. Is there a way onto the roof from inside? There is a ledge access, but Vorik stopped. It is designed for a dragon. Marcus looked at the ledge access, looked at the dimensions, looked at Vorik. Can you lift me? The silence on the ridge above went very particular. Every dragon up there had heard that. Doric's head moved. The request was, no human had ever. The audacity of, Vorik said, yes. It took 40 minutes. Marcus on the roof in the last of the afternoon light, driving anchor pins into the stone lip above the overhang, running rope in a load-bearing pattern he had used on a dozen structures in conditions worse than this. Vorik below, watching with the focused stillness of a creature that had decided this mattered. Wind starting to return from the north, different now, heavier, carrying the cold ahead of the storm front. Marcus came down off the roof when the first stars disappeared behind cloud. That'll hold, he said. The overhang won't fail. The seal on the lower third will be fine. The middle section is exposed, but the temporary brace will limit the water infiltration. Vorik looked at the work, at the rope pattern, at the anchor pins set so deep they would have to be chiseled out. You'll need a shelter, Vorik said. The valley path will be closed by midnight. I have a tent. A tent, Vorik repeated. It's a good tent. You will shelter in the cabin. Marcus opened his mouth. That is not a request, Vorik said. You secured my roof with 2 hours left before a mountain storm. You will not sleep in a tent. Up on the ridge, Doric watched the human follow the small dragon through the cabin entrance. The wind came in hard from the north. The elder dragon said nothing. The laughter had stopped 3 days ago, and he had not noticed until now. The storm hit Stoneback Ridge like it had a grudge against it personally. Marcus had been in mountain storms before. He had been in storms that took structures he had trusted and turned them into lessons. This one was different in the way that northern mountain weather is different from everything else. It was not just wind and rain, it was weight, solid, and moving, the kind of weather that removes the concept of outside from the world entirely and replaces it with a single undifferentiated roar. He sat inside Vork's cabin and listened to his rope work hold. It held. Every 40 minutes, he could hear the overhang creak under the water weight, and every time the rope took the load and redistributed it, and the creak resolved and the structure settled. He tracked it the way he always tracked his work under stress. Not anxiously, but with the focused attention of someone tallying a score. So far the score was good. Vorik watched him track it. "You are listening to the building," the dragon said. "Yes. You can hear whether it is holding. You learn to." Marcus had a cup of something Vorik had produced from deep in the cabin that tasted like pine and rock and something slightly combustible. He was choosing not to ask what was in it. Every structure has a sound when it's working and a different sound when it's failing. The working sound is quiet. The failing sound has a frequency to it, a kind of vibration in the bass tone, like a wounded animal. Exactly like that. Vorik was quiet for a moment. Outside, the storm drove itself against the north wall. The wall with the crack, the wall that was half repaired and half open, and Marcus heard the temporary brace on the roof take the hit and hold, and then he heard the lower seal hold, and the exposed middle section did what he had predicted it would do, which was breathe. Not fail. Breathe. Let the water come in at the margins and channel it down and away from the deep crack where the anchor stones he had set on day one were doing exactly what he had set them to do. "Tell me about the war," Vorik said. Marcus looked at him. The dragon's eyes were amber in the cabin light, patient, and there was something in the question that was not idle. It had been sitting there since day 7 and had finally run out of patience. "Which part?" "The part that made you stop moving past things." "The storm outside, the rope holding, the building working." Marcus set down the cup. There was a forward base. Northern Theater. Storm came in faster than the weather units called it. About 40 minutes of warning instead of the 40 hours we were supposed to have. He paused. We had structures that weren't ready. Temporary shelters, mostly holding about 60 people. I knew the drainage was bad on the east face, had flagged it twice, hadn't had the material to fix it. When the storm hit, the east face drainage failed inside 20 minutes. He stopped. Vorik waited. Did not fill the silence. That was, Marcus would think later, the most important thing. The dragon understood that some things need their full space. 58 of the 60 people got out, Marcus said. We got very lucky. But the 2 who didn't, one of them was in the section I had flagged. The drainage section. He looked at his hands. I don't know if fixing the drainage would have changed it. The engineers said probably not. The failure was too fast. But probably not isn't the same as definitely not. The storm leaned into the north wall. The seal held. And so now, Vorik said slowly, when you see a wall that is cracking, a drainage problem, a roof that is carrying too much. I stopped, Marcus said. Yeah. They sat with that for a while. The storm was at its peak now, the kind of violence that makes you understand how provisional all structures are, how they exist by negotiation with the forces around them, and what they need, more than anything, is someone who takes that negotiation seriously. Toward the deepest part of the night, Marcus heard a different sound from outside. Not the building. Something else. He went to the cabin entrance and looked. The storm was a solid wall of moving dark, but through it, coming down from the ridge complex where the elder dragons sheltered, he could see shapes, moving with the kind of careful deliberateness that means something is going wrong. A sound beneath the storm, lower than the wind. He turned. Vorik was already behind him, reading the same signs. The ridge complex, Vorik said. Is there a weak structure up there? The East Gallery. It has been flagged for 2 seasons. The elders said it was not urgent. Marcus was already getting his rope. You cannot go up there, Vorik said. In this storm, a human, if the east gallery fails with dragons inside, how many? Vorik's eyes were very still. Perhaps 12. The younger clutched shelters there during storms. Marcus picked up his toolbox. Then, I need you to carry me. It was not the same as the roof. The roof had been calculated and controlled. This was 300 meters up a ridge in a mountain storm with zero visibility and wind that hit like a horizontal wall. Marcus wrapped in rope that was attached to Vorka's foreleg, tool bag across his chest, moving through the dark by feel and by sound and by the particular stubborn certainty that had been with him since he was 23 years old and learned what happens when you walk past the thing you should have stopped for. The east gallery was a long, low overhang structure carved into the ridge face. He found the failure point in 4 minutes. A support column on the gallery's windward side had cracked at the base. The same foundation shift problem as Vorka's wall, the same 3-season pattern of slow separation, and the storm was now loading the overhang with enough water weight to make the column's failure imminent. He had rope. He had anchor pins. He had 11 years of making things hold under conditions that were not designed for holding. He set the brace in the dark, by feel, with Vorka's body blocking the worst of the wind from the east, and the young dragons inside the gallery making sounds he could feel through the stone, and his hands moving with the certainty of someone who had stopped running the math, and was simply doing the work. The column held. The gallery held. When the storm broke near dawn and the gray light came back over Stoneback Ridge, Doric was standing outside the gallery. The great elder dragon, oldest on the ridge, the one who had laughed the loudest on the first morning, was standing in the post-storm cold looking at the rope brace on the gallery column. Marcus came down off the ridge with Vorik. His toolbox was lighter. He had used most of his anchor pins. His jacket was destroyed. His knees were making sounds like an old cart on a bad road. He stopped when he saw Doric. The elder dragon was enormous in the early light. Ancient, scarred, the kind of old that accumulates weight the way mountains do, slowly, over time, without announcing itself. He looked at the human for a very long moment. Then Doric did something no elder dragon of Stoneback Ridge had done for any reason that any living creature on the mountain could remember. He lowered his head. Not a bow. Not quite. But the angle was unmistakable. The angle of one being to another who has earned something that cannot be named simply, only recognized. Marcus stood in the post-storm cold with his destroyed jacket and his depleted toolbox and looked at the elder dragon looking at him. The east gallery column needs proper repair, Marcus said. What I did last night will hold for 3 weeks, maybe 4. After that, you'll need to reset the foundation the same way I'm doing with Vorka's wall. Doric straightened slowly. We will need someone who knows how to do that. I know how to do that. Yes, said Doric. We know. Above them, on the ridge, the young dragons were looking out from the gallery, alive and warm and looking at the human who had come up a mountain in a storm with rope and anchor pins and the particular human quality that everyone on Stoneback Ridge had spent 9 days laughing at and had now stopped laughing at entirely. Not because the human had demanded respect, because the wall held, because the column held, because some things don't need to be argued. They only need to be demonstrated. Marcus opened his toolbox, counted his remaining anchor pins, made a note in his notebook. He had work to do.